are you doing? And welcome to another episode of Muscle Matters, because muscles do matter. I'm joined tonight by Evan and Ed, and tonight you're in for a treat. If you've been stuck with your PRs, you can't get it off the ground, whatever's going on, we're gonna fix it tonight. Be right back. Hey, welcome back to Muscle Matters. So tonight we're going to be talking with Ed and Evan, and it's going to be pretty much them. This is their expertise. So we're going to be talking about how to take certain movements, because let's face it, everybody wants to bench press, everybody wants to squat, everybody wants to deadlift, and they just don't seem to get past things. And I think there's 3 reasons why you can't get past your sticking points. I think reason number 1, you don't want help.
Yeah.
Reason number 2, you think you know it all.
True.
Or reason number 3, you're just kind of like, you're too scared to ask somebody. I remember one time I was in the gym, and this is my prime years where I feel like I'm the king of the world. And this old man walks up to me. Didn't look like much. He walks up to me, and I'm doing the preacher curls, and got a chunk of change on there. I feel like I'm really cool. And he goes, "You're doing those wrong, man." And I go, And I kind of looked at him, and I went, "Okay." And he goes, "Okay, you need to do like sit like this." And he moved me around, set my body up. And I went, "Oh, okay, I feel that better." He goes, "Yeah, Larry Scott used to be my workout partner." If you're not familiar with the preacher curl, it was originally called the Scott curl. Larry Scott is the one who invented it. And that old timer and I became really close friends. And he would bring me all these pictures of all the old timers of him set up at Larry Scott. So you have to be open. If you're number 1 and you think you know it all, you're just going to be stuck and deal with it. So we're going to keep it moving along. So let's start off with the deadlift. See, deadlift seems to be the king right now, and it's the big craze in most gyms, and everybody wants to deadlift. Everybody wants to deadlift. So the sticking points, there's the floor, there's the transition, and there's lockout. So kind of run us over some of the things somebody can do, not so much for the lift, but like, if I can't get it off the floor, what accessory should I work on? If I can't get it through the transition, what accessory should I be working on? And if I can't get it to lockout, what accessory should I be working on for that? Because, lifting it off the ground, that's all anybody wants to do, is just try to yank it, yerk it, look like a dog taking a poop and blowing out their vertebrae. I'm going to get it up by any means necessary. No, bro, there's some things you might need to fix. So, Evan, why don't you start off with you and Ed? Just go for it.
Okay, so sticking points from the, getting it off the floor, I'd say, first of all, let's take a look at your technique. Are you wedging your hips into the bar to engage the quads? If everything's looking great as far as technique and you're just not strong enough, or you're having an issue with getting it off the floor, I'm going to say we need to possibly go off of, back down the weight a little bit, and we can go to some resistance with some bands.
Okay.
Pulling from the floor.
Now, when you say resistance with bands, how are we doing the bands? What are we going to do with them?
We're setting them across the bar over the collar. Usually there's 2 places to be held on, from the front, in the front and in the back.
So this primarily would be great if your gym has a deadlift
platform.
Yes.
Correct.
Okay.
And we can go over to when it doesn't, but so I would start with dropping some weight, working, 5x5, 5x4s and stuff like that with a submaximal weight, breaking it off the floor to be able to help, because even though the bands are across the bottom and there's not much tension, there's still a little bit of resistance enough to help you start breaking that. And then as you build up your weight each week, little linear progression, progressive overload, wherever you're working and everything like that, you're able to keep feeling that band tension initially budge, help you get off the floor, and you feel the resistance right off the bat until you're all the way close to your max. And now we can lose the bands. And now we're starting to feel, I now feel the difference. I feel I'm wedging in, hips are engaged.
Now, when you say pushing. Wedging, explain a little bit out there.
When we're wedging into the bar, as we're using the bar to bring our hips down, we're pushing our hips into the bar along with our quads.
Okay.
So knees are going to fall over bar. And by doing that, that's going to engage the quads and hips to be able to help you spring off the floor or power off the floor.
So the knees should be over the bar.
Correct.
Okay.
Go ahead, finish, and I have a point off of that.
Okay. To a certain extent, if they're too far forward of the bar, then what's going to happen is the hips are going to shoot up real fast, and it's going to be a 2 process movement where it's hips up and then turns into a stiff leg deadlift instead of just a normal deadlift.
Okay. Ed, you have anything that want to add?
I think as you go along, you need to start figuring out your own leverages. So what Evan said is correct, that your knees over the bar. So depending on your leverages, the length of your quad, the length of your shin, that protrusion is going to be more or less. Somebody with longer legs, obviously their knees are going to stick forward, so they might need to adjust back. The first thing I would suggest is finding what your proper form is initially. Obviously, you can start loading all this other stuff before. When I was coaching football, one of the things that I heard a coach say was the KISS method. Keep it simple, stupid.
Yes.
Yeah.
You can reinvent the wheel, but why? So start with the simple stuff like getting proper form for your leverages. Get a coach, somebody that's a little bit knowledgeable. Not all cues are going to apply to every single lifter.
Now, when you're talking form, you're not talking conventional and sumo. There's different. It's so just so people understand, you're not talking about, okay, you're doing it. You're stuck conventional. Now we're going to switch you to sumo. You're not switching. You're just changing foot placement, hand placement. What are we changing?
Whatever is your optimal mechanics to move that specific movement. So you have an optimal stands for conventional for your leverages.
Okay.
The same thing for sumo, the same thing for the squat. Yours and mine are going to be different. Your leverages are different than mine. That doesn't mean that you can't do the lift. You just need to learn your leverages. That's a very important thing. A lot of lifters skip over that because they go to social media. They go watch this lifter that's pulling 1,000 pounds. And this kid is not shaped in any way, shape, or form like that lifter. You need to kind of look at somebody that has the same dimensions you do so that you can kind of adjust that form. Does that make sense?
Now, yeah, it makes perfect sense. Now, one of the hard things I think for that, because what you said, Evan, is we got to back off the weight.
Yeah.
That's number one. We got to back off the weight so we can figure out why you're stuck on the floor.
Correct.
So a lot of people, they come in and they start deadlifting because they're watching something on social media. Their buddy's doing it. They come to the gym and now they're deadlifting. And all of a sudden they're, 1, 2, 3, 4. They're deadlifting 4. They're deadlifting 5. And they've had great success because by nature, your body's going to go to a point before it hits smack into the wall.
Right.
Yep.
And once it hits smack into the wall, because you've had a nice strength curve, because that's the body's going to allow you to get stronger. And when you hit that wall is when you have to drop your ego and recognize that your form is wrong.
That's when when you hit the wall is when you're going to learn how to lift.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Technically learn how to lift.
Yeah.
So, and that's when you have to be open to ideas and don't think you know it all, and not just continue to beat your head at say somebody makes a nice 535 and they're stuck. They've been stuck at 535 the last 5 or 6 meets, the last year and a half in the gym. They just can't get past that. It comes down to something's wrong with your technique.
Right.
So we need to back off and figure, what are you doing wrong, correct?
Right.
So now that we've started on the floor. So now we're coming up in transition and we're stuck in the hip area. That's pretty much the next place you get stuck. What is some accessory works they could do to help that leverage point?
You want to take this one?
Go ahead. I'll expand on it.
So as far as staying on the deadlift bar, we can do pause deadlifts where we break it directly off the floor, hold in position for 1 count, and then fire up all the way to finish the lift. That's one way. Again, we can utilize the bands or chains. You can do either one for accommodating resistance, which will help. This is also working submaximal weight to be able to break that sticking point. But pause deadlifts are really nice. You can go to snatch grip deadlifts, which you're definitely going to taper down the weight a bit.
Now, when you say snatch grip, explain.
Almost a snatch, you're going to hold the bar excessively wide, almost like you want to perform the movement, a snatch movement.
And if you're not familiar, the snatch is grabbing the bar and snatching it over your head.
Yeah, so you're going to hold excessively wide. Also with this, your leverages are going to change, but what this is going to do is build that back up. It's going to help you, as long as you're staying in position, your lats are locked in place. You're going to have to hold that position for the whole time to be able to hold and come all the way up. So that can also help with that as well.
Ed, do you want to jump on
in a more peripheral way without deadlifting? You can do good mornings.
Okay.
You work your reverse hypers and hyper movements that'll strengthen your back.
Okay.
Again, it depends where your sticking point is
Okay.
at, and
So
it's
let's start knee to hip. So if we, like,
So your lockout. So
Your
we're talking
lockout,
lockout
yes.
now. Okay.
we can start with what do we call them when we put them in a box?
Raised deadlifts.
Yeah, the raised deadlift.
There's all
You can
different
put a mat, a couple of mats, or a box on each under the weight, and you're just performing the lockout.
so
Yeah.
you're forcing them to get to their sticking point and work through their sticking
Right,
point.
and it's twofold. You're working the lockout, and because you're not pulling it off the ground, you can actually overload the lockout because you're not spending the energy getting off the ground. So if you're, I mean, just an example, if you're a 500-pound deadlifter, you should be able to load more weight on the bar, like close to 550 on the bar. You're doing partial movements,
So,
but you're just working the lockout.
so I mean, it's so what you're saying. A lot of people won't understand that because they don't have the mats and platforms, but it's kind of like a rack pull.
Basically,
So
Primarily, that's another way to do
That's
it.
a word.
Yes.
That's
It's a back instead of leg driven movement. It's
Yes.
a back driven.
back-driven
movement. Yeah.
you're taking basically you're taking the legs out of the movement.
Okay.
I think a big one too is the glutes are so neglected. People
Okay,
don't think to actually work their glutes because at the top end you have to squeeze your glutes to be able to get your hips through.
Okay. Now, what are we doing for glutes?
Poof. Man.
We're not doing band work, right?
No. Well, technically you can if you're
not-
doing.
you- what
you can
I'm-
do
what I'm-
realistically.
you're not doing it.
We're not doing
off-
kickbacks.
we're not doing.
Not doing the IG social media ones.
Putting the band on the knees.
Yeah.
Yeah, just sit here and do this for 3 hours.
Right.
Yeah, you're good. So there's a couple different avenues we can go. If you have access to the machines, you have a GHR or glute ham raise. That's a great one.
Now, that one's the one that's locking in your ankles and you're falling forward and pulling yourself up.
Exactly. You
Or-
utilize it in your
or you can
it's
have-
glute driven. It's glute driven where the glutes are taken, where the hamstrings are helping, but the glutes are taking over at the top end.
Or you can sit on your knees and have somebody hold your ankle. And
Well, I was just going to get to that next
Okay.
one. That's an inverse. So the next one, if you have access to it, you can do a Nordic curl or just negative Nordic curls, but that's going to be a little bit more hamstring driven. Where if you have the inverse curl machine access to,
okay, break down the difference between the inverse machine and what I was saying they could do.
so with a Nordic curl, someone's going to be holding your feet in place, or you have an apparatus which I have now where your feet are locked in place, your ankles, and you're on your knees and you're going forward and controlling it all the way down. And then when you get to a straight line, you're having to contract and squeeze the glutes to be able to start driving upward, which is extremely hard.
And it's more of an advanced movement that
100%.
the people that I've seen control it completely all the way down, touch their nose and go completely up. Wide receivers and running backs in college,
Sprinters.
sprinters.
Strong
Sprinters.
hamstrings.
Yeah,
Sprinters.
hamstrings, exactly.
Other than that, I mean, it's okay to control it to a certain point. You drop and then you push yourself up
So
and then have it engage again.
So you can kind of do the negative, fall forward, and hold it as best as you can,
And then push yourself back
catch
up to
yourself,
help.
and then
Yep.
shove yourself back up.
And
Exactly.
it's still incredibly effective. And it's a body weight movement. You don't have to load it with anything. It's hard enough just by itself.
Yes.
Right. Or if you have an inverse curl, which is primarily an assisted Nordic curl, like we have only at NOS Power, we can, what's it called? It's actually counterbalance with weight, excess weight. And it's going to be different per individual, per hamstring strength, glute strength, and everything like that. So you can load as little or as much as you want on there. And you have an apparatus where you're holding on and you're coming on all the way down. And then you're assisted by the counterweight to help bring you up. And that's glute driven into hamstrings too.
Okay.
Good mornings, like Ed said, for glute work. If you're pushing back, RDLs will help a little bit. Although
Now-
they'll hit hamstring a little bit more.
Okay.
But if you're getting that stretch at the bottom,
If you control the tempo,
exactly.
you're allowing yourself to stretch that glute a little bit more and then control it. The problem with most people is that they're afraid of that good morning is the speed of it.
Yes.
Now, if you're uncontrolled, any movement, if you do it incorrectly, it's going to hurt.
Yes.
Or you're going to hurt yourself. There's tempo work you can do, concentrate on the stretch. And again, that muscle mind connection that we've talked about before that works in bodybuilding,
Yes.
it works for every accessory in powerlifting.
Now you can also, can't you do good mornings with bands?
Yes, you can. Literally, you just kind of strap them down in with your feet, sit them in the midfoot, put it over the neck, and you can perform that movement. That's usually high volume movements, unless you want to load up 2 or 3 heavy.
So if somebody
bands.
is scared of actually doing a weight, they can start off with the band.
It's a great introduction.
Kind
100%.
of like, okay,
Yep.
okay, I can add some weight now. This isn't going to hurt my back the way I thought it would.
Right.
Okay. Now we're at the top, and I see that a lot of competitions, people just can't get it to lock back. What's the trick to get it to lock back?
It depends on, so that could be either just glute deficiency,
Okay.
not being able to activate it, squeeze through.
Okay.
That could be they've fallen so far out of position, they're able to kind of fishing pole and round their back to get it up to a certain point, but they're so rounded that the weight's just overbearing at that point, so they're not able to kind of bring the shoulders back with it because
Okay.
they're just lost in space at that point.
So that it's more of a technique thing.
Glute technique.
Yes.
Okay, go ahead. Ed.
Yes and no, because like Evan said, if you're not able to maintain a neutral spine position, and again, not for everybody. There was a few old school powerlifters that look like
Yeah.
hunched up, and they were world class.
Yep.
Now those are outliers. Not everybody can do that.
Yes.
But getting, like Evan said, if you're curled here and you get up and you can't get the weight, that's also upper back strength.
Okay.
Rear delts, your traps.
Okay.
Your lats even some fashion because your lats are not locked how they're supposed to be.
Okay. Now, Evans had talked about that earlier, locking your lats. Now, people may not understand what locking your lats mean. Explain locking your lats.
Well, it's almost like honestly a lat spread in bodybuilding. You are flexing that muscle, sticking your chest out. Obviously, and it's not necessarily a lat spread. It's kind of when you're starting the lat spread, but you want to force that muscle to stay stiff like that.
And you're working on depressing. You're
You're
into
depressing
the
your
lower lat
scapula and flexing your back.
into the lower lat.
Okay.
That's what you're trying to do, because by doing that, you're pinning your lats. Once those lower lats are locked in place, the rest are going to follow.
So
Your
you
whole
don't want to
lats-
relax. You don't want to have a relaxed lat muscle when you go with your deadlift,
Correct.
because now you're trying to, like Ed was saying, you're trying to pull with the back muscle, and it's already past the point of pulling.
From your waist up, it should be considered a lever. You lock that up and then you drive the deadlift up with your legs.
Okay.
Whether it's sumo or conventional, one is more glute driven than the other. But at the end of the day, you're using your upper body as a lever just to hold the weight. The work is really done with your legs.
So you guys keep referencing back to the glutes. So it seems like the glute is a huge part in a minor way of a deadlift. Like it's a minor muscle that might get ignored.
The sooner you can start contracting and squeezing your glutes when you get up past the knees, the faster it's going to lock out.
Okay.
So that means the more developed, the more strength you have there, you're going to have more control, which means that lockout's going to be snappier every time you deadlift, even with a larger load of weight.
So what is something that somebody could do, just without going through a large list, something outside of what people normally do? It might be the only thing you might recommend, the glute bridges, something outside of a glute bridge or a kickbacks that they could do for the glutes.
As much as it's like a, I guess, fit chick exercise, hip thrust, when correctly done, it doesn't have to be, if we're looking for development, it's not a fast movement, an explosive movement, right? We want speed coming up, but we want to be able to take the load as we're coming down. Tempo wise, 3-5 seconds, control, explode up. And we're not trying to throw our hips up and through. We're trying to keep kind of rounded a little bit. So that way it's all glute being activated. And a pause at the top. I think that's where a lot of people get it wrong. They just try to throw their hips as hard as possible, come back down, throw hips, where the glutes get neglected at that point.
And in all reality, if it's a major deficiency of yours, you should start with a warm-up for your glutes before you deadlift.
Okay.
What would
you recommend?
Coming from coaching athletes like football players and wrestlers, I like doing glute bridges. I have my athletes when they're young kids, just
100%.
glute bridges on the ground with no weight. Just hold it, squeeze your butt as much as you can. And after 2 or 3 sets of 30, 40 seconds, you start feeling your butt. And you're like, okay, so now when I deadlift, okay, there it is.
So it's kind of like in bodybuilding, we say the pre-exhaust. So you're telling your mind to activate that muscle. So when you go to pull,
it works.
You're more conscious of feeling it now because it's got blood and it's working. Correct?
Yep, exactly.
Okay, we're gonna keep it moving because athlete, we already hit a whole bunch of time. So now we're gonna slide. Let's go over to Big Daddy, the squat. So now we're squatting. I will let you guys just break down the squat any which way you want to, because I know it's going to come back. We're going to start off again with basically technique. And so let's go technique and work our way from there.
Well, I think for any of the big 3 movements, squat, bench, dead, and I see it on heat. Unfortunately, I see it a lot, especially with newer powerlifters or newer lifters that go on with social media and watch these. If you are not injured, if you don't have a pre-existing injury or anything, how do you warm up for the squat? Squat.
Yes.
Squat.
Yeah.
Get the movement going. Now, when you incur injuries later on, you can start different warm-ups, but if you're healthy, squat.
Yeah,
That's the biggest thing. You see guys warming up for the bench press or doing all the shoulder work. Is that you hurt? No. Then go bench. Get on the bench and bench.
Stay with the squat. We'll come back. We'll come back to that.
Well, the same thing. It's
Okay.
just what I'm getting at is that squat. Initially, just again, figure out your proper mechanics.
Yeah, body weight. You can just start warm ups, body weight squats, goblet squats. Especially if you're ready to go under a barbell already. Just getting those mechanics down. Hip hinge. It's a hip hinge, right? You hinge at the hip, then you process to go down and fire up out of the hole.
Hinge at the hip. Explain that a little bit more.
Your hips and your glutes are going to lead the way always with a squat. You know, if you break at the knees first, one, you can cause injury down the line, not possibly right away, but you're eventually going to wear and tear on those knees a bit more than you want to. The hinge is just pushing your hips and glutes back initially. It doesn't have to be over excessive. It just, you're just pushing back and then descending down.
Now, I see a lot of people box squat, but they're not, it seems like they're just using the box to squat. Isn't that more for that technique? So you're going down looking for a place to sit your glutes to come back up?
Yes and no. It can be utilized for that range of motion, that depth that you have to hit. So in powerlifting, you have to break hip crease has to break above the top of the knee. So people will use it for that spot if they're unsure of their depth and they want to make sure they hit the spot they need to hit every time. Another means for it is to actually, it's utilized to be able to widen your stance, sit back and load into your hips, and then fire up.
So by widen your stance. What is Adam going blank on his name, but he used to always say, open up your taint.
Right. Ed Cohn.
Yeah. So when you say something like that, explain to them, because you said widen up your stance. Most people squat really close together because that's what they see on the internet and that's what they see Mr. Bodybuilder doing, and he's doing it just because it's quad work. So for the lift of PRs, because we're PRing, we're not doing body work, we're PRing. What does it mean to open up your taint, and how does that help the squat?
Okay. So we're lifting for different purposes.
Yes.
Like about bodybuilding, like you said, there's nothing wrong with squatting with a closer stance. Yeah. We're making it quad work.
Yes.
Powerlifting is, if you break it down, it's I want to move the most weight in the most efficient manner. Sometimes it's actually taking some of the muscle out of the movement and using leverage. So by widening your stance, number one thing you're going to do is shorten the distance you're moving the weight. Same like the bench press, sticking your chest out and all this stuff. Shortening the weight so that I can be more efficient in that range of motion for that one rep. So widening your stance does that. Now it changes the dynamic of it because now it is more of a glute and hip movement. It takes your quad somewhat out of it. I mean, your what's the inside of your
adductors?
Your adductors work a little harder when you're in wider stance. Okay, not saying that your quads aren't involved, but it's involved if your stance is closer.
Yeah.
In theory, it should allow you to move more weight in a shorter range of motion. Also, you're trying to be more efficient with the movement. It's not supposed to be pretty.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. So since we're talking accessory work to get through your PRs, let's say you're stuck at the bottom. How do you get from being stuck at the bottom?
Pause squats.
Again, the box squat is a great tool. You can set the box lower. One thing that the box squat does is take something away called a stretch reflex. When you squat with no box, the velocity you acquire is building tension in your glutes. It lasts, and I don't remember the science exactly, but it's, let's say, a few tenths of a second. Now, by pausing, you're eliminating that stretch reflex, which helps you jump. It's almost like a rebound, like a rubber band rebound.
Yep.
Yes.
When you sit on the box, if you sit on the box properly, you dissipate that stretch reflex, and now it's dead weight.
So now you're
making the movement
to come out the bottom.
You're making the movement harder.
Yep. So we don't want to touch and go in the box when we're trying to get out of when we're trying to work.
If you're working on that, you can do touch and goes for a purpose.
But if we're working out of being stuck on the bottom, we're not touching and going.
Sit, make the box a little lower than usual, and again,
while keeping your hips loaded.
You're going to have to swallow your pride and back up on the weight, but then you're teaching your body how to get out of the hole when you're loaded in a more aggressive fashion.
Okay.
That makes sense?
And the pausing will help you find better leverage to get out the bottom too, correct?
Yes. And it'll teach you how to grind.
Yeah, exactly. That's a big part of it.
One thing that a lot of lifters don't know how to do, and it takes a while to learn how to do, how to grind a lift.
Okay.
it doesn't always feel good.
Yeah. Now, I don't know, and I'll leave this is why I said we got you guys on here for your expertise. We're trying to lock out. We can't lock it. What is something you would teach somebody to lock it out? If there is something to teach on a lockout.
I think that's just a happy medium of your quads and your hamstrings, and that just comes down to basic assistance. And it's always meat and potatoes. I love the hack squat. Hack squat's going to be king for quad development for sure, and getting you out. And the nice thing with the quad squat is you can go narrow, you can go wide, you go exactly where your power squat stance is. If you're a power lifter with that, you can work pauses on that. You can work tempo on that. So time under tension. It's just about development and strength in the muscles.
Tempo, explain that a little bit more.
Tempo is going to be your time of, you can either eccentrically or concentrically.
So 3, 2, 1 down,
yeah, exactly. Usually it's on the fashion of going down. If you're trying to make it extremely hard on yourself,
it's on the up.
It's both ways, even with a pause.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, you can go every
3 down,
which way.
3 up.
Yep, 3 down, 3 up. You can go 5 down, 1 count, pause in the hole, pop out.
You don't like people, do you?
No.
I think for me personally, what helped me a lot is the bands. You had to put pretty good resistance on the bands, so it'll make it harder to lock out, because as you go up, the lift gets harder. People now, not how bodybuilders do it to make the lift easier to hang in the bar. You put the band on the bottom, wrap it over the bar, so as you're going up, it becomes harder.
So when you're doing the band work, you're not trying to PR the squat with the band. You're just getting a respectable weight that you can move to make it a harder weight at the lockout, because you are having issues with your lockouts.
You can't get strong by PR in every week.
It comes to back strength too.
Yeah.
The up top with the back. It's usually whoever, if you're going for a 10 out of 10, you're going for an all-time PR, platform gym, whatever it may be, your back's going to be able to hold up through the lift coming down, because you have to hold at your position. If you start loosening up and losing your position at the bottom, you're already halfway to failing.
Yeah.
On your way up, you have to be able to hold your position. If you start losing it, you round, it's going to be, the bar's going to roll. A lot of things can happen in that way. So back strength for sure for squat and deadlift.
So what is something, back strength, are we still falling back to the good mornings even in the squatting?
So no, like Ed said before, it's an upper back. You can build your low. You want to build your whole back as a whole, right?
Okay.
But between the squatting and the deadlifting, if performed enough and you're enough intensity with enough volume, yes. But you still want to incorporate your back assistance work, which good mornings are going to be great. 45-degree hypers, 90-degree hypers, the reverse hyper. All that stuff is going to be fantastic, and there's a slew of other ones. We can just keep running down.
So what you said, it was the
upper back. So your lat pull downs perform properly, not actually swinging back and making it into a row.
Right.
And there's all the different grips you can do: supinated, pronated, neutral. It's like anything else. Usually the bigger the muscle gets, that means the stronger you're going to be getting with it in the long run.
That's the one cool thing. You see lifters of every shape and size in powerlifting. But you will never see a huge bencher that doesn't have big lats. You'll never see a big deadlifter or squatter that his lats are not developed. The back is an integral part in all 3 of the lifts.
Okay, we're going to slide right into the bench press. Ed, explain to me why I would have huge lats from being a big bencher.
It's a base. It's the support. It's the launching pad from the bench press. You have to be able to control it at the bottom, and that's the huge stabilizer muscle that you need.
That's what you use a coil, primarily as you're coming down. So for benchers, and if you're bodybuilding, it's a little bit different. You want to be a little flatter, so you get a bigger stretch for the pecs, right? As far as powerlifting goes, we want to our thing is to make it
again, something like the deadlift, protect your scapula.
Yep. So we're looking to retract. We're looking to depress down into the lats. Pulling sternum. There's a couple of cues. Pull chest up, belly up, sternum up, ribs up, what have you. Whatever's going to hit, you're pulling them up, and that's going to keep your lats loaded the whole time as you're coming down. And that's what's going to help coil that bent. So when you're ready to press, there's also leg drive incorporated. So all 3 lifts are full body lifts. All the big 3 when we go to because
So I heard you say incorporate leg drive. That's something I learned late because nobody talked to me about that. By the time I learned what a leg drive was with a bench press, I was shot. So explain leg drive.
No, that's what I tell you. You get kids that are I've gotten kids that are bodybuilders and then come to powerlift and we teach them how to bench with a leg drive, and the next day they're like, why are my legs sore if I just benched? Because you're using them. It's almost like a leg extension when you're You want to tuck your legs in, get some. When you're in the getting ready to bench position, your quads should feel tight,
Yep.
so that when you either getting ready to touch your chest, or as you touch your chest, you drive up and you push you're trying to drive your head through the bench the other direction.
Yep.
It'll increase the level of torque, or the level of power output, I guess,
Yes.
you're letting out, and it'll help. If you take the leg drive out, it's all shoulders and chest.
Yeah, and you're losing stabilization. Your legs are there to be cemented on the floor. So a lot of things we see, new power lifters, just new lifters in general on the bench, they get happy feet. They're tapping their toes as they're benching and stuff.
Yeah.
So they're losing a lot of stabilization. They're losing a lot of power being able to drive through the floor. They don't even have to drive hard with their legs, but if their legs are cemented, their feet are cemented in the ground,
Right.
not moving, and they're just even slightly pressing through the floor, that's going to generate that much more power for them to be able to press, whether it's reps, whether it's heavier weight, what have you.
So once again, you would back off so you can learn how to.
Comes that technique.
Okay. So now let's talk about sticking points, because that's what this whole thing is about, is sticking points. So let's say I'm stuck at the bottom. What do I do to get out of being stuck at the bottom?
Well, one of them is learning the leg drive, obviously, and that's more. What would you say? Chest strength, neck strength, and shoulders.
Overall,
Because at the
yes.
top, it's triceps.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of stabilization. Honestly,
You can use a camber, so you can use a cambered bar, right? So utilizing a cambered, some kind
Now,
of
what is
bar,
the cambered
cambered
bar?
bar. What's the best way to explain a cambered bar for
it looks
people
like
to
it's
hear?
bent.
Yeah, it's bent. It's bent. So
like
it's
a half moon.
longer range of motion, right? So the longer range of motion you have to do to come down, the harder it is going to have to be press up. So obviously the weight you're going to be using isn't going to be the same weight you're using with a straight bar.
So basically, my hands are coming below my chest,
Correct.
in order to touch it. So
You're stretching your pecs.
okay.
Correct. Yeah.
So it's causing me to have more tension on my chest.
Right. So hypothetically, your bench is, let's say 275 is your best you can do. You're able to load up and finally make your way after a couple weeks of training, months, what have you. You get up to like 255 and you're hitting doubles or triples and everything. Hypothetically, you should be able to take a straight bar at that point and get over the hump with the 275.
Okay. So we're backing down on the bent bar to push up, and then once we start owning that lighter weight, which is what 75% of your 100% max.
Right.
Right.
And so at that 75%, once you start moving a little bit, that 100% max should move up.
Roughly 75. I'd say more around 85%. You get to 85%. Yeah, you should be, your 1 rep max on a regular straight bar should be able to start making its way towards at least 5 pounds, right?
Okay. Now we're on our way up, and we're here.
The transition where triceps really start taking over.
Okay.
So neutral grip pressing, triceps, blow your triceps out every which way for strength, for size, every which way. So any bar that has a neutral grip, dumbbells that have a neutral grip, right? And you can do incline too. Incline would be is a great one too, because now we're developing our anterior shoulder, the front part of our shoulder on the delts. Developing those, big stretch, and the triceps are taking more of a load. You take away a little bit. Anytime you neutral grip, you're taking away from the lats somewhat when you're pressing, compared to having the pronated grip on the bar.
So why would I take away my lat if I'm here? Explain.
Because once you're halfway, that's the transition phase where your triceps are starting to take over the weight to lock out.
Mm-hmm.
So the stronger the triceps can get, that way you're going to be able to press. Another thing is board pressing.
Right. You're taking away the lat to make it harder on the tricep.
Okay.
To stimulate the tricep. You can, again, kind of partial movement so that when you strengthen that tricep, and then now when you activate your back and that tricep is stronger, you have more push.
Now, what about something like the floor press? Would that play into tricep strength?
100%.
Yes.
So would that be a
That's
good one?
perfect.
That's a great one.
Okay.
That's a great one right there.
So
And
explain.
it takes away your leg drive if you're doing it
Now
correctly.
explain the floor press.
You're basically laying on the floor. You try to rack the bar so where you can unrack it and bring it down. You'll never, because you're on the floor, obviously you're never going to be able to touch your chest because your elbows are going to impair you. But then now from there, it's basically dead weight. It's almost like when you're doing the squat, you're doing the box squat. It's the same thing. You stop, and then from there, from dead weight, you stop and you try to drive it up.
So instead of loading into your lats all the way down, you're loading it just strictly into your triceps.
To your tricep.
Okay.
Yep.
Now, and there's no way because you're laying flat on your back, so the legs are out, all that good stuff.
There's always a little,
There's
human nature. Once you start loading the bar, you kind of arch your butt a little bit. But I mean, if you keep your legs straight, you take away the leg drive.
Okay.
You're going to push your butt into the ground because you're trying to push up, but it mainly your triceps is mainly working.
So this is another one where you kind of have to throw your eagle out the door and go, all right.
Yeah, you're going to drop down from where you're regular.
I hit 3 plates yesterday. This is a 1 plate exercise today.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, lockout. Is there anything to help with lockout?
The triceps. That's just
Again,
at
So
that
it's
point.
coming out. It's still triceps.
It's all triceps and train them every which way. Time under tension, like we talked about, tempo with your triceps. Dips are great.
What if I just want to do what if I want to go over to the cable and just do push that, good old fashioned cables?
No, that's great for bodybuilding, but if you want to perform, you have to mimic the movement that you're trying to complete.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Dips are a little bit different. I think if you do body dips and stuff, they're a little harder. But press downs, yeah, they're good. You and I know
Could be used as a finisher
it's a finish
for the day. If
Just
you're triceps,
finish putting blood in them.
Okay.
Yeah.
But you want to do you want to power lift, do some close grips, do some
Skull crushers.
skull crushers. Do
Something
some
called a
dips.
JM press.
Do the JM press.
Explain that one.
Okay, so usually taking with a barbell, you come down almost you come straight down. It's a closer grip. Come straight down. You roll it to make that circle of the J of a capital case J, and then you roll back and follow the same pattern to press up. So you're coming down, tricep loaded, rolling into the triceps, so you're getting more time under tension. Then you're rolling back off the triceps to be able to finish.
So
the
it's
lift.
almost like a skull crusher into a close grip press.
Kind of, yeah. So when you're rolling it, you bring it to your chin. That's the only difference. We're not actually skull crushing. We're not staying vertically and just bending elbows to forehead, right? Yeah.
And with that one, you should be able to lift a little bit heavier than what you would with your skull, with a normal skull crusher, correct?
Actually, no, it's backwards.
Okay.
Now, Jay, the guy that developed it, he used to do them with like 495. He was crazy though.
Yeah.
Well, it is,
Yeah.
Now I've seen that one done. A lot of people like to do it with that with the
Yoke bar.
Yeah. Now, do you recommend the yoke bar, or do you recommend?
I do. For wear and tear, I do like the
Right.
yoke bar. I
No.
like the yoke big time.
Why?
Easier on the shoulders.
Okay.
A lot easier on the shoulders. Less
And
wear.
the pad is right there too. So if you like drop it, you can be a little bit more adventurous per weight. So if you kind of drop it right here on your neck, close to your neck, there's a huge pad there, so you're not going to get injured.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else you guys would like to throw in? We're right at the 30-minute mark. Anything else you guys would like to throw in to let people know? Because this whole thing was about being able to break your PR.
Just consistency. Just stay consistent. Consistent eating for what you're trying to do, and sleep. The basics. It's
Patience.
yeah.
Patience. It doesn't come. It doesn't come overnight. Everybody wants. With social media, again, it's a great tool, but it can also be a detriment when it comes to that, because they see these young guys, these 25-year-olds that are doing these amazing things, and it's like, you don't understand, that guy's been training for a while, and he's also doing some other things that are helping him out.
Yeah.
And they don't show you the nasty, dirty stuff that they're doing, the close grips when they're, they think that all these fancy other exercises, like we were talking last time in the last podcast, it's the meat and potatoes. The boring stuff is what gets you strong.
The actual assistance work.
Consistency and assistance work.
You fine tune your lifts on the actual compound movements, right? And then, but you're really going to get your most strength out of the assistance stuff. That's how you're going to get stronger, and really upon the application to those movements, whatever ones you choose to do.
If you guys would like to dig any more information out of their heads, you can find them both at Mass Power. They are there. They are taking currently new clients as well. Or are you guys locked up?
I've got some.
Yeah,
I've got some spots.
And if you can't afford being a client, you can get coaching.
Correct.
They will write you a plan.
Yep.
And I would like to make sure that we thank our sponsor, Covenant Coffee. Hope in a Cup. They do a lot of wonderful things for the youth out there. Make sure you stop by at Coventry. And thank you guys very much. And gentlemen, thank you guys for riding shotgun with me. I appreciate you guys.
Thanks for having
Thank
fun.
you.
This has been Muscle Matters. Thank you very much.